Good evening, everybody. My name is Mohammad Saeid Mahdavinejad, and today I'm going to present you the first practical part of Data Technology Management course by Professor Amirhassan Monadjemi at the National University of Singapore. In this session, we are just trying to install Hadoop by using Docker, and Docker is a development and delivery platform that enables us to build, share, and run same applications everywhere. It has some advantages over virtual machines, and before we get to the installation, I should mention that you have a lot of ways to install Hadoop. You can install Hadoop by compiling the source code. You can install Hadoop by using pre-made virtual machines, and you can install Hadoop by Docker. Installing Hadoop by Docker has a lot of advantages, and one of them is that you don't have to worry about the configurations, and you can just easily install the Hadoop cluster and manage the cluster. If you want to expand your cluster by Docker, you may have some overload problems, but by time you can handle that too. So let's go to the installation. The first thing that I should mention is that there are lots of tutorials on the internet about installing Hadoop by Docker, and most of them are useful and you can use them. But the thing for them is that they are somehow complicated. They somehow mismanaged to guide you through the different terminals that you may encounter during the installation. So we just decided to have a separate part of our course to installing Hadoop. The first thing that you should do is that you should go to the github.com/Mahdavinejad/Docker Hadoop to get all the things that I will talk about, and you can have a step-by-step command and run tutorials here. And I should mention that I actually got the instructions from the how to set up a Hadoop cluster in Docker at clubhouse.io, but I found their tutorials somehow complicated, and somehow they need some technical skills to install Hadoop. So here I just in the quick start part, I just try to show you how to simply install install Hadoop, and you can actually run every line of code here step by step. As you can see here, I've done that, and we will go through that next. But you can see that everything is useful and everything can work, and I think they got the proper explanation too. The first thing, let's go to start. Let's go and start installing Hadoop. Installing Hadoop. The first thing that we should do is that install Docker. When you want to install Docker, the website, and everybody, they suggest you to install Docker Desktop version for Windows. And Docker Desktop nowadays, in the newer versions, it doesn't have some features that we need for the Hadoop installation as a cluster. For example, Docker machine is not in the package in the Docker Desktop. So we have to install Docker Toolbox, and if you want to install Docker Toolbox, you should go to this link. It guides you to this website. This website is very easy. You can do it by yourself. And the first thing is that you just check your system. For example, that the visualization that should be enabled in your computers, and for example, your OS must be 64-bit. And you can go through the tutorial and instructions very easily. For example, you go through Toolbox releases. I just use the latest version as this time, and you can follow up on the video to see what we're doing with the installation files. And the tutorial actually is very good, and I suggest you to finish it by yourself. You can see it has a lot of images, and let's see what will happen after we install our file. Okay, let me get things done here. I will go to the desktop folder. I have downloaded both files, Docker Desktop and Docker Toolbox. And when you want to install Docker Toolbox, you don't have to change anything at all. You just have to go by the default options, and you don't have to change anything. For example, here we just hit next, 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 and install. I have already installed the toolbox, so I just cancel my operation. But it's very easy. Actually it's very light, and you will get it very soon. Get it installed very soon. Okay, after you're getting that, the thing that happened is that you can search in your Windows, and by just typing Docker, you will see that there is an app that's called Docker Quick Start Terminal. This is where all the things that going to happen, and we are using it for the rest of this tutorial. So when you start the tutorial, the Quick Start, Docker Quick Start, you will see some shapes like this. It's a Docker icon, and you will see that your machine that is a Docker Quick Start terminal has an IP, and it is my IP on my machine. And it started an interactive shell for me, so I can type my commands here and get the outputs like the other terminals beside. So let's go through the tutorial that we have made in the GitHub repository. And before we go to it, I just forget to mention that our repository is forked from the Big Data Europe Docker Hadoop. Thanks to them, we are now able to use Hadoop as a Docker container. The other thing that I should mention is that I have changed some files. In the original version, and our version is somehow different from the others. The first change that I have made is that, so you have the Quick Start installation that the original repository doesn't, and the other is that I have made some changes to some files to make the tutorial easier for you, so I will mention them next. Okay, I will follow this instruction. I will show you the output of instructions. The first thing that we should do is that, so we just run the Docker Toolbox, and we have it. The first thing is to check if we have the three main components of the Docker: Docker itself, Docker Compose, and Docker Machine. So we just type these in the command line. You can see that Docker version outputted the version, Docker Compose version, and Docker Machine versions all are successfully outputted the versions of themselves. Okay. The next thing that you should do is that you should download this repository. This repository in the GitHub contains a lot of code. Let me make it bigger. So this repository of mine, it has lots of files here, folders and files, and rest of the tutorial. And if you want to download this repository, you just go to the green button that said code, and you can click on it and click on the download zip, and it will give you a zip file. I just I just downloaded it and here it is, and I just unzip it here on the Docker Hadoop master in the folder, and you can see it here that it is like this. So I just downloaded the GitHub repository here on my computer, and we will go on and let's see what's going to do next. Okay, let me minimize again the tutorial, and so we are just downloaded the necessary files. The other thing is that, okay, let's go to this directory in our interactive shell. So it was in my desktop folder, and it was Docker Hadoop master. I should just type change directory in the Windows and give the address just to change my directory here. You can just copy and paste the instructions and commands to the shell and terminal very easily. I have done that, and so you can see that I was here in the program files Docker Toolbox, and when I just change the directory, I am now in the desktop and in that folder. The other and the next task and command that we are using is that Docker compose up. Let me give you an example of what we are doing now. Actually, the Docker compose is a platform, is a library that enables you to run different containers at the same time. For example, now when we want to have a cluster, a Hadoop cluster, we want to have a name node, resource manager, history manager, and different data nodes at the same time. We want to run them all, and we want to connect them together and have a cluster that is working. Docker Compose do this by just referring to the file that we have here is name, and the name is that Docker compose.yml. So this file is going to be executed by Docker compose up, and we are using the D because we don't want to get the detailed output of the command. So let's see what is in the Docker compose.yml. As you can see, there are I don't want to go to the details, but you can see we have a name node, we have a name for each, we have a volume, that we have an address for that, and we have a port mapping here for the name node, for the resource manager, but the same, for the history server, the same, node manager, data node 1, data node 2, and data node 3. They have the same, not the same, they have different properties that we have just specified. So this file tells the Docker, okay, I want to have a name node, resource manager, history server, and 3 data nodes in my Hadoop cluster, and get them running as soon as possible for me, So let's run this code and see what's going to happen. When you run this code, it's going to give you sorry, let me go up. It's going to give you an output like this: creating name node, done; creating data node 2, done; creating node manager, done. I just resized the window so the text is not good organized, but you can see that everything is done, and we have created everything, and Docker Compose build them and run them by default. So they are now alive, and they are now running. So we have a name node, we have a data node, and etc. The thing here is that in my command line, as you can see in my terminal, you don't see a lot of details about the downloading the Hadoop files. why I'm saying that, because it is the second time you are seeing the output of my terminal in the second time. The first time that you type docker compose up, you will see that it's going to connect to the Docker repository, and it will download the Hadoop base repository from the Big Data Europe repository that I have mentioned, and it will take a little time. It depends on your internet speed, but it's going to finish, and it will make the instances of different nodes in the cluster. So now we have everything that we want. So we have a cluster, and we can check this. Let me minimize this again and go to the instructions that we were again. Okay. So the next thing that we should do after Docker compose up is that check and see how the Hadoop cluster status is. When we just run, when we just run Docker PS, it shows us all the containers that have been made by the Docker compose, their name, and for example, the image. You can see that here we have a history server, a resource manager, node manager, data node 1, 2, 3, and name node. And you can see that, for example, they have been created about 6 seconds ago, and they are up. They are all up, and you can see that column that's called ports, and you can see, for example, our name node here, the port of the Docker container 9870, because the Docker, you consider Docker as a, for example, if you want to understand, you can consider Docker as a virtual machine. So we have a name node virtual machine. We ported the IP of this virtual machine to my port on my computer. So on my computer, if I just check this port, I will get the status of the name node as one of the visualization parts of the name node and Hadoop in the newest versions. And you see now the names of the nodes again too. So let me go back and see what should we do. So we were here, we just used Docker PS to see all the containers, and we saw that we have all of them up and running. So we can click, we can check in our browser, because I told you that we have a port forwarding here, port mapping here. In our browser, by Docker IP and the port, we can, and using HTTP, we can go to the cluster and see what is happening in our cluster. So it is my IP address, it is my Docker IP address, and it is the port that we are just mapped. And here it is the overview of the name node. So it is and it's a regular report of the cluster. You can see the capacity that we are using, and as you can see, we have live nodes of 3. We have 3 live nodes, 3 data nodes, that they are sending heartbeats to the name node, and it seems that we have the Hadoop cluster up and running. So you see that we don't, you didn't have to do a lot of configurations, port mapping, network configurations, different permissions on your file system and operating system. So you don't have to handle any of that, and with that time, I think in 5 minutes you can have a Hadoop cluster up and running on your computer. I mention up and running a lot because if you try by yourself to install Hadoop, it's not that easy. it's going to take a lot of time from you, and you will see some errors or some obstacles that you haven't seen in your life or something like that. Okay, now we have a report of the name node. Let's go to the next step. By now we have a cluster up and running, and nothing is wrong with it, and everything is okay. Everybody knows each other. They have their IP address. Name node can now run some MapReduce jobs on the data nodes. HDFS is up and running. We can use Yarn and the other libraries as well. So the next section of our tutorial is that okay, let's go through the name node. Let's have some files. Let's put them on the HDFS, and let's run some word count program and application on that, and see what are the results. So the in summary, we want to have some files in the HDFS, and we want to run some code on it to count the words on that files. The first thing is that, okay, now here, as you can see in the terminal, we have a $sign. We are in the terminal of the quick start Docker. Okay, so we are in the Docker that we are, for example, we are using Docker PS. You can run the Docker commands. But let's go to name node, and let's have some files there and do everything that we want. The next command that you should run is that docker exec it name node bash. It simply says that, okay, I want to have a bash of the name node. So as you can see, when I just typed that, the address changed, and we are now here at the name node. And it is separated by the hashtag, and it's not the same as the $sign. So here we can see that we are in the name node. We are not in our system. We are not in the desktop Docker Hadoop master again anymore, and we are in the actually a dark machine of name node. Let's make some directory. The thing here, I will explain them here, and I will show you the outputs here. We will make a directory and we name it input. We put two files in the input, f1 and f2.txt, and in each of them we just have a simple two-word hello world and hello Docker in each of them. So we have these two files with this content in the input folder in the Docker in the name node, but not in the HDFS. We can use Hadoop fs mkdir p input like regular Hadoop file system commands, and we are making a directory named input in the HDFS. So we have an input folder here with the files in the name node, local name node, and we now make a directory in the HDFS, the distributed directory on the data nodes. We name it input, and after that we just copy all the content of the input local input folder to the distributed input folder on the HDFS. So now we have F1 and F2 on the cluster. We had 3 data nodes, and these 3 data nodes they will get some part of each file. So it was easy. When you run these tasks, they don't have so much of output, and it's gonna look like this. And I just here, for example, HDFS DFS I put these files into an input folder in the distributed file system, and it says, okay, this file exists. I did it twice to make sure that it happened because it had some warning. And you can now type exit. When you type exit, you just come out the name node and you go back to the Docker terminal again. So we are now here in the desktop Hadoop master and in the Docker container. So we just went to the name node and did some distributed things, made some files and distribute them to the nodes and came back. So now we are in the Docker. We are in the Docker. The next thing we want, so we have the data in the data distributed to the data nodes. The next thing we have is that we have a source code. We compiled it to the jar file. It was a Java file, and we compiled it to the jar file. It's actually one of the MapReduce example files that is included in the Hadoop that you are downloading from the Hadoop website. It's theirs. So we have a code, and we want this code downloaded first of all, and after that we put it in a name node and we will run it on the cluster. So our problem is that the code and the execution file, the jar file, is in my computer. I have downloaded it. Where it is, I can show you. It is this file. When you downloaded the repository, I just included this file in the repository that you don't have to go somewhere else to find it. So you can easily, you just have it. By downloading the repository, you just have it. It is one of the changes I have made to the repository. So we want to have this file. Let me show you this file here. It is my local system, desktop, Docker, and this file. We want to put this file into the name node, and after that we run this file over the distributed HDFS for Hadoop distributed file system or on HDFS. So let's see what we have here. Let me put things together. So let me get the terminal here again. So we are here in the container. The next thing is that we just want to copy this file from our hard disk to the name node, but we don't know the address of the name node. Where is the name node? We can use the docker container ls command that will give you it jumps. You can see here docker container ls is like the other task docker ps, and it gives you the container ID of each of these containers, and you can access each container by its ID. So for example, for the name node, if I have this ID, I can use the command that I have introduced here, docker cp, and instead of your ID just copied, the ID that I am now copying, if you just put it here, it will do the work for you. So let me get things straight. Maybe I made you confused. So we want to copy our our jar file to the name node. We use docker cp, docker copy. We say, okay, it is our jar file. It is the address, the ID of name node here that we want to copy to, and we want the name to be the same as it was. And after that, you don't have any output, but the copy has been done. So we have a code and we have a jar file in our name node. So let's go back again here. Let's go back again to the name node, and we are now here in the name node. So we can now just run our Hadoop command or Hadoop program over cluster by just saying Hadoop jar and introducing our jar file and saying which part of it we want to run, which function, and say okay, I want the input of this code to be the input folder that we have just made and distributed over the cluster, and I want the results to be output and to be stored in the output folder that it will be made. So this command easily executes our code over cluster in a distributed mode over 3 data nodes, and it makes a MapReduce job, and as you can see, and it finishes finish it. So let's see what's going to happen. For example, when I just started the MapReduce job, you can see that here I just it gives you a lot of info and warning you don't have to worry about. Here I just executed the command, and now it started a lot of things. I don't want to go to the details, and it started the job, and you can see the maps 0% reduce 0%, map 50% reduce 0%, and etc. till the reduce is 100%, and the job is done. And by the next command, HDFS cat output, we say okay, show me what are in the output folder in this file that the Hadoop will store the results in this file. So we will see that the output is like that: Docker 1, hello 2, word 1. There are just the words that we made in the 2 files. Let me show you. Here we had hello world, hello Docker, and we just counted them and got this result. So now we can say we have created a Hadoop Docker, and now we just executed a simple program over cluster and got the results very easily. As you saw that the installation was not a hard task to do, or it doesn't have any complex terms and concepts, and it was very easy to use. And at the end, you can just come out of the name node and just let me show you. Type docker compose down. Docker compose up makes everything's up and running, and down makes everything's offline and everything. It will firstly stop each of these nodes, and after that remove them from being executed in the Docker. And now I can say that we have installed the Hadoop cluster and we have executed a file. Before I just finish, let me let me give you some example of how the MapReduce job has been done in this task. As you may know that MapReduce is a concept that Hadoop uses for big data processing. It uses the first step. We generate lots of mappers, and we send each of the mappers to data nodes. For example, we have now, in the simply way of saying, we have 3 data nodes. We say okay, we have 3 mappers. You mappers, you should go and count the number of the words in each of the data nodes, in each of these data nodes. And after that, we just collect the results out of the mappers, and we just send them to one of our nodes that we call it okay reducer, and it will collect the results and sum up the counts and generates the final results for us. So the MapReduce job is a very effective distributed computation over big data. So I hope you have a good time, and thank you for your time. Goodbye.